Good evening, folks. We're back on the 37. We're going to see if we can get this roof filled in tonight, so stay tuned. All right, we've got the roof kind of prepped. I've got most of the body filler and stuff kind of ground out best I could. I could probably do a little more grinding, but I'm actually going to have to cut some more of this out because I want to make a piece. The metal's kind of warped up a little bit right here, not from the chop, but I think this might have been a pulpwood truck or something at one time, so we're going to try to cut some of the bad out while we replace this section. So I'm going to make a bigger piece. So all right, I've got my sheet metal here. It's a piece of 18 gauge. I just kind of cut it to shape. I'll have to cut some more on it to get it all the way where I want it, but as you can see, that's not really going to work. It doesn't really flow with everything. So I'm going to have to get my English wheel and I'm going to have to put a little shape in this and kind of get it to curve down here because it doesn't, as you can tell, it doesn't fit. So we're going to see if we can get this side at least part way done tonight. I'm going to cut this and trim it up a little bit more, and then we'll get the English wheel and get it shaped. All right, I've got my sheet metal here. Put a little bit of shape through this, through the middle. I got to make some shape this way, and I've got to make some shape this way down here towards the end. I'm more concerned with getting the sheet metal curved this way right now, and I'm using my almost flattest die. You usually want to start with a low crown die first and then move up as you need it, but being as this doesn't need nearly as much shape to it as, you know, some panels can be, like right here in the cab corners and places like that, we're just going to try this. So I'm going to set this up real quick. I'm going to get her ready to go. Want to run it up until you get a little bit of light pressure on it. And you want to keep this is actually just it's just a Harbor Freight English wheel stand. I'm actually going to add some bracing to it for doing bigger panels. I made some fender skirts here a while back with it and it did all right, but there is some flex in it that needs to be taken care of if you're going to do a bunch of stuff. So, but this should work for us now. And you want to start and stay away from your edges. I've already got the sheet metal prepped and ready. So we're going to make a few passes with some light pressure and see how it does. And be careful because it can pinch your fingers and that doesn't feel good. So, and don't run off the end of the wheel like I did that. Sorry about all the bugs. Bad time of year for that. So we've got all kinds of stuff flying around in the shop. Count how many times you go back and forth, especially in certain spots if you're just trying to add a little bit of a curve like we are. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's starting to get a little bit of a curve that way, and we're definitely getting a curve this way. Now I can put a rubber band. I've got a big wide rubber band. Oh, it's kind of dirty right now. I've got a rubber band that can go on this wheel if you just want it to put shape in one direction, and that helps if you just need a panel curve like this. I actually need shape in multiple directions, so we're just going to leave it like this. A scientific method of bending over my knee. Alright, let's see if we can add a little bit more shape to it. There's several other YouTubers that have modified their English wheels. You can look those up. I can't think of any right offhand that come to mind, but I know there are several that show modifications to these to make them better, and and it helps greatly when you're trying to do stuff like this, if you do that. And I am kind of rusty at this. I haven't used my English wheel in quite a while, so it might take me a little while to get it all where I want it. But it's a lot, I like the English wheel a little bit better than a power hammer just because it's quieter, and if you have neighbors or something around your house, they're probably not going to like the loud noises and everything. So I'm going to try to get some more shape in this without pinching my fingers here. Add a little to it. And this can be kind of relaxing until you pinch your finger, if you let it be. I don't know if you can tell, but it's definitely putting shape in the panel, especially this way, more than what we had. So let's see, look down it. All right, let me test fit it. And sometimes I use the top of my English wheel to help with bending stuff. I need to add a little shape here on the end, go in the other direction. Like I said, I'm still rather rusty. We'll get this done and get some shape in this. All right, let's check it. All right, you kind of look down it right there, you see how it's starting to take shape. I need to put some Clecos in it probably to get it to hold down in the place of where it needs to go, and then that way I can scribe some lines on here and get it all cut so that it'll be ready to weld in. I'll still have to do a little work down here in this area here because it's still out a little bit, but I'm pretty sure I can cut a bunch of that off right here, so shouldn't be a problem. All right, we've got our panel kind of set up here. I've got some shape in it now. It still needs to be shrunk down here in these corners, and I'm actually going to trim off the corners and round them, but I've got some lines marked right here, so it'll tell me where I need to shrink, because I need this to curve over this way, and I need this to come get shrunk right here and right here, so it'll be more flush with the cab here. All right, these are Clecos. I use these to hold the sheet metal panels on. They work pretty well. A buddy of mine named Jody, he hooked me up with these here several years ago, and they work great. He's got a tattoo shop down in Huntsville, Texas. If you need some quality work, go down there and check them out. It's FN Classy Tattoo. They're good people down there. So we're gonna see if I can get this shrank here in these corners and down here on the side. before I trim them up. That way I can get it to fit a little bit better here. It fits pretty well up in here, so we should be just about ready to go, other than I'm going to have to mark my lines so I can cut the underlying sheet metal out and get it welded up. All right, as you can see here, I've got the sheet metal here shrunk down some. If you look, you can kind of see teeth marks in it. If you look here, you can kind of see marks in the sheet metal and the edges. Hopefully, I think maybe you can see it here. That is my shrink marks. I have a shrinker stretcher machine, but it's kind of a pain to get the camera over there where it's at, so I just decided to do that part and then come back over here and bring you guys back. So now what I need to do is I'm going to have to mark this out. I need to trim these corners off. I want to round them all. That way, whenever I weld, it doesn't create a hot spot. So we're going to do that now, and I'll show you how I get a nice curve done on the corners down here. All right, I've got a socket here. I believe it's a 1.5 inch socket, and you can kind of hold it up there if you can see, and I can draw around it and make the turns so that they look a lot nicer than what they would if I just free-handed them. So, all right, I'm gonna hold the socket up here. That way I can get a good line on my marks. So you can kind of see here. Move this up. And these are just my rough beginning cuts. You can see there where I've got it marked out so that it'll make the turn. We'll get this trimmed off here, make sure that they are nice and smooth. That way we can get the sheet metal trimmed out and get it welded up. All right, we got the panel back up here. I've got the corners rounded off. I've got this area shrank down so that it fits the cab pretty nice. I need to mark the edges off so I can see where I need to cut, and then I'll cut part of it at a time and cut it out of there, and then set this down and tack it. I don't want to do it all the way because then I don't have anything to hold the sheet metal in place. And so we'll just do it a little at a time and then push down and tack it in, and I'll show you guys how I do that. Okay, we're going to try to see if I can put some marks up here so I can trim some of this sheet metal out. So this piece here can kind of sit down in there. I'm going to do these ends where they're rounded. I'm going to try to cut them first and save the middle part for later. That way I can cut that out and keep these clecos in place. I'm going to use, I don't have any Dykem spray, but I've got, these make good for doing kind of the same thing for stuff. It's a big king size Sharpie. You can mark the surface and then use a scribe or a pick to scribe the outside lines, and that way it gives you a good idea of what you're trying to cut out so you can be accurate on your cuts. Have to pop these clecos out. Some of them anyway. I'll tear them up trying to get them out. Let's pop these out. They come out pretty quick. That's a good thing about using these versus screws. Screws you're constantly drilling in and out, and eventually you'll tear the holes up where the screws go, whereas these here you don't really tear the holes up. So now they're not ideal in every situation. Sometimes these clecos they hard to get into certain places if it's a real tight corner or something like that, and there's other panels over the top of it. So, but we're pretty close to our hole there, and I'm also trying to use this panel to, when I cut it out, to cut some bad sheet metal out that has some low and high spots in it I'd like to get out that are pretty rough. So we're gonna see here if my marker's not completely dead. maybe. Okay, well, apparently my marker is in better days. Well, let's go find another marker. Alright, well, my marker decided to die on me, so I'm gonna have to get another one of those tomorrow. I'll worry about it later. I took my small one and was still able to get some marker residue, I guess you could say, up there. So I'm gonna go ahead and scribe these marks down here on this end so I can try and trim this out. And it's pretty easy to do. You just pretty much just scratch a line all the way across around it. And you can use, I've used welding rods, grind them to a point. Just anything that's metal and sharp works pretty good. You don't necessarily have to use the fancy tools. They're nice, but you can still get by with regular stuff, so. Alright. We will pop these back off, and then I'll show you kind of what our marks look like so we can see where we're going to cut out here in a minute. That way, once we get all this cut out, I'll start tacking this end in the opposite end, because it's got the rounded corners too, and to me it's easier to start moving moving the areas that are hard to cut out with like a grinder or whatever tools you have. Sheet metal shears. Oops, lost that one. So we'll see. I've probably got a little too much shape in this, but it's pretty easy to bend, so I think it'll be all right. So. But I'll bring you over so you can see. If you look right there, let's see if we can get up closer. You kind of see in the light there how there's like a scratch right there in the sheet metal, and that scratch is what you're wanting is to get down enough that you can see where you're cutting, so that it'll be a real nice fit. All right, so what I'll probably do is I'm gonna try to, I'm gonna try to grind these straight stretches with the grinder, and then I'll probably try to use the shears or something to trim it out. And then once I get that trimmed out, then I will use my small die grinder to trim up to the line. So, and we'll do that here in a minute. Alright, and right here in these corners, I've got it kind of chopped out. I ended up just using snips for most of it. It's getting kind of late at night, and so I didn't want to make just a huge bunch of noise. So, but to get this rough edge right here kind of smoothed out and to get it to fit the shape more, I'm going to use I guess this would be called a half round file. That way I can get down in there and file that to shape in these corners, and that way hopefully we have a tight gap for welding, because the tighter the gap in this type of welding situation, the better your final product will end up being. So. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and I'll bring you guys right back as soon as this is done. Okay, I've got this kind of trimmed up, and I've got some of the rust and paint and stuff cleaned off. It could probably be cleaned up a little better, but I think it's pretty good for what I'm doing. So I ended up using the hand file on a lot of this, but I also have a rotary file that I got in here, and kind of made the corners a little bit better, so this fits a little tighter with, because I'm a little short on time. So we're gonna put this back together, put the Clecos in it, and I'll show you how close it fits, and we will get it ready to go here. Alright. It takes a lot of work to do stuff like this. I'm not gonna kid you. There's a lot of stuff off camera that you don't see, and especially in these TV shows where they build cars in a week and stuff. They probably have big crews, whereas I'm doing all this by myself. So, see if I can get that hole line up. And if I'd had to do this with screws, I'd have probably destroyed the holes in the cab by now, as many times as I've had to take this on and off. So, investing in a set of these Clecos and the tool to use them, good thing. These are American-made ones. I'm assuming they make that probably some of the jungle websites and stuff like that probably sell them. I believe I've seen these on Eastwood. I think they sell them. Who knows? By now you can probably buy them at Walmart, for all I know. But look them up on the internet and they'll show you. Alright. We've got it back up here. As you can tell, I accidentally knocked it in a little bit, but that's not too big a deal. Alright, you can see where we've got this cut out on both ends now, where all I've got is my straight cuts that's got to be cut through here. And I think I should be able to do them with a saw like this, my little air saw, cut through there after I put this back in here. See if I can do this one-handed. Probably not. But you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I'll have to get some clamps to hold that, but and then we, whoops, get it somewhere around in there. And you want to file the gaps pretty close. I got off a little bit right here, got a little heavy-handed, but that's okay. It'll weld up. This isn't a Concours restoration by any means. This is just a old hot rod that I'm planning on making a shop truck out of, and you know, they're not always perfect, so. Alright, well, I'm gonna get this clamped in here and show you how all this works. Alright, we're gonna see if I can get a few tacks around this part of the panel here. I'm gonna see if I need to hammer this down just a little bit so I can get it fitting down in there good, but we're gonna tack it around this end, and then I'll need to tack it up at the top up there in a couple of spots, and then we'll cut this seam out and you'll see how it goes. Trying to make sure they're flush. Just have to come back and fix those spots later. Alright. I think we got that tack good enough. We'll probably go over it with the grinder real quick, knock those spots down, and then we'll get the top side up there tacked, and then we can get to cutting. Alright, well, we've got this panel spot welded here. We've got this holding it. Bring you up here. Alright, we've got it tacked, and we've got it tacked down here. We've got it, so I can get the camera over here. We've got it tacked down here, so we still got our Clecos. Now all we got to do is cut the edges out and tack as we cut, and then this piece will be in place. Alright, it's the next day. Had some technical difficulties the night before, so I just went ahead and called it a night. Back on this. Let's see, I've got some of my cuts made. We're fixing to try and spot weld it here like I was doing, and show you that process and finish cutting down here. So here we go. Alright, I'm gonna see if can see where I've got these tacks up here, and my metal's fitting pretty flush. Kind of screwed up my cut right here, but nothing a welder can't fix. But doing this progressively as you go makes it a lot easier and keeps the panel pretty flush. That way you don't have just a huge amount of warpage or anything. So I'm just going to keep cutting down the sides and getting them cut and take these out, and we should be good to go. There we go. Alright, now you can see how the sheet metal fits up here. Alright, now we've got the sheet metal cut without a whole bunch of trouble, and now you can see if I get it back in place here that we'll be able to get it up and tack it in, and then we'll have our filler piece in. So I'm gonna get this in place and we'll get the tack. Alright, I'm fixing to try and get this welded up, and then I'll bring you guys back whenever I get done. Alright, I've got the welding mostly done-ish. It kind of needs a little more work in some spots, and I've still got to work out a few spots up here. There's some lows and highs that I need to work on and things like that, but for the most part it's pretty well in there though. So I got this side pretty much done here, and mostly on the outside for what I'm going to do right now until we do final body work, and I still haven't decided exactly whether I'm going to go with like a patina type thing or if I'm actually going to paint this thing. I'm kind of leaning more towards painting it, but we'll see as the future moves. So, alright, well, I got this done and this done. I still need to finish the garnish molding on the inside. Alright, you can kind of see how it is. It's not perfect by any means, but it's a lot better than it was, and I've got it fairly smoothed out. So now what we need to do is finish the other side, and this chop will be done. Well, in that spot. Alright, thanks for watching. We've got this part filled in, so stay tuned for the next part. We should get to these back pieces and the inside of this garnish molding. We need to finish the inside of it and this back piece, and we should be getting pretty close to done with the cab part. I still need to put some rockers and stuff on, so we've still got more to do on the cab before we'll be getting to the chassis work. So stay tuned, check out my other videos on this build if you're interested, and you know, do the things at the bottom. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with a new one, and hopefully we'll be getting this cab done, and get that done, and we'll be moving on to the chassis. So stay tuned.